Welcome back, everybody. Today we've got another 2026 NFL mock draft. We are only a short few weeks away from that special draft night feeling. So let me know in the comments below if I got your team right in this mock draft, as well as who you want your team to draft. I really appreciate all your guys' feedback and would love it if you hit that subscribe button. But let's start it off with the guy already named right here. It's going to be Fernando Mendoza. So at the number 1 overall pick, this team brought in new coaching staff as well as a new head coach, and it's clear that they want their identity to be off of that run game. You have Ashton Jeanty, who you selected in the top 10 of last year's NFL draft, and I think they really want to establish this because, let's face it, Fernando Mendoza, he is an elite quarterback, but he's not able to win you games directly on his own. I don't think he is as elite of a prospect as the likes of Drake May and Caleb Daniels in recent years. However, going off of the run game is really his attribute and his best strength. So obviously I know he won the Heisman Trophy winner. He also won the national championship. I'm not here to demean the number 1 overall pick here. I'm just saying he has some limitations in his athletic ability, but I do think that with the right coaching in the system around him, I think he could profile to a guy like Sam Darnold or Jared Goff, where if you just put the right pieces around him, he could make wonders with this team, and I am very bullish on what the Raiders have been doing in this offseason in particular. I think they're in prime playoff consideration in the next 2 to 3 years with this roster, so I really like the selection at number 1, and then at number 2, we've got the New York Jets. And they're going to go with Ruben Bain. Yes, they're going to pass on Arvell Reese and go with probably the more ready player from day one. The edge rusher from Miami has been an absolute game wrecker. I know that there was some worries about the arm length considerations. I don't think that's going to factor much into his draft position. He is just a beast, and I think this is great talent for a team who just traded Jermaine Johnson out of the door. You need edge rushers, and with all of these first-round picks in the next few years, that is one of the staple positions, along with offensive linemen, that you just want to get right before you actually throw a quarterback into the fold. So they're trying to build all the pieces before they finally get that main quarterback position lined up. But hopefully the Jets can kind of claim that in 2027. But for now, they get an elite pass rusher in Ruben Bain. And then we go to the Cardinals, who absolutely go with the offensive line position. Francis Maui-Noa from Miami. So back-to-back picks for the Hurricanes, coming off a college football playoff national championship appearance. And Maui-Noa is one of those guys that was really the driving force. He is an athletic offensive lineman. He can get to that second level, which is so valuable. Being an athletic offensive lineman allows this Arizona kind of team and culture to be able to utilize all of their skill position players. You just brought in Tyler Algier. You obviously want to get him going as well, but you also still have Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, and Trey McBride on this roster. There's no reason why this team can't be able to put up points. I know that they're going to have to attack the defense in the later rounds, and they've already made free agency moves to do so, but in this division, you're going to need to put up points, and I think Maui-Noa, as far as another team looking for a quarterback in the next few years, this is going to bode well for them going into the future, long beyond the 2026 NFL Draft. Moving right along, we go to the Titans at pick number 4, and they are going to select Jeremiah Love. I know it is probably a coin flip between them and the Commanders at this point, who gets Jeremiah Love in these sweepstakes. However, I think the Titans pull the trigger because they really have lesser bodies at the running back position. Tony Pollard is clearly aging rapidly as far as running back years and age is considered. You have Tyjae Spears, who I think could actually complement Jeremiah Love quite well. However, Love is just an absolute generational talent at the running back position. I am actually on the record for saying I like him just slightly better than Ashton Jeanty last year. I think he has a bigger frame and is overall more pro-ready than Jeanty was. I think he can hit the home run from anywhere. The only downside is he just tries to hurdle everyone on every single play. I think that'll get coached out of him, but there's no excuse for that raw athleticism being on display every single play. And for this offense, you get Brian Daboll, a guy who has worked with Saquon Barkley as a high draft capital running back. He was able to work well with that offense, and I think they're going to try and kind of follow that same path with Tennessee. You got Wan'Dale Robinson and Cam Ward now going into year 2. I think this offense could still use a tight end or another playmaker at wide receiver, but for now they're going to capitalize on the talent on the board because they already spent so much money on the defense, and with the development and head coach Robert Saleh, I think he has enough to get this started, so they tailor towards the offensive side of the ball and go with Jay Love here. And at number 5, we've got the New York Giants, and they actually go with linebacker linebacker Sonny Styles from Ohio State. He lit the combine on fire, breaking all the records for the linebacker position in the history of the combine. So I think this athletic specimen finds his way onto this New York defense, which has all the talent. It just needs the cohesion to be able to fit seamlessly. You have guys like Abdul Carter and Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence up front, but I think they're lacking that intelligent kind of middle linebacker position. And Sonny Styles is athletic enough to rush the passer, cover running backs out in the flat. I think he is just one of those unique talents where, yes, you probably shouldn't be taking a linebacker this early, but he is just so unique as a prospect that you want that talent because outliers are always on the board. Guys like Kyle Hamilton at the safety position who got drafted way too late in previous years. Now, if you were trying to redraft, you would go way higher, but you just sometimes got to rewrite that narrative you have in your brain, and I think the Giants capitalize on this value at number 5. I think he's a perfect addition for this Harbaugh defense, and they should be able to hit the ground running from day one. Next up is going to be the Browns, who have a lot of holes. However, at pick number 6, they go with Carnell Tate. You're probably starting Shedeur Sanders going into next season, and in order to give him an adequate chance at success, you're going to need some weapons around him. You're letting David Njoku walk out of the building, and Jerry Jeudy and Harold Fannin just are not enough to be able to tell if you have an elite quarterback on your hands. And Carnell Tate is one of those premier X wide receivers that can be dominant, especially in the early weeks of the season. You're not going to have to wait for him to develop into a pro. He's one of those guys that'll be ready right away. He had his best 2 games of the season against Indiana and Michigan. He is no victim of the big moment. He can get downfield, profiles similar to T. Higgins, and I think this is a home run pick for Cleveland. Washington at number 7, I know they miss out on Jeremiah Love, but it's no consolation prize to get Arvell Reese slipping down to number 7. One of the premier edge rushers left on the board here. I think this is great value for Washington. Head coach Dan Quinn wants to bring that physicality back to the defense, and if you're getting this guy in Arvell Reese, you're getting one of the raw potential, highest upside edge rushers in this draft. Maybe not even edge rusher. He has the highest ceiling of any player in this draft, in my opinion. He profiles as that modern edge rusher that the NFL is towards kind of leaning. He's a little bit slender, a quicker edge rusher. So I think he's going to be perfect in this system, and you pair him with Mikey Sanders still, and you should have a young defensive core that can really actually sustain Jaden Daniels, so that way he doesn't have to put up 30-plus points every game, and you don't have to go for it on every 4th down to make the playoffs. So hopefully this is enough to push Washington a few more wins and make the playoffs once again. At 8, we've got New Orleans, and they opt for Caleb Downs. Yes, he fell a little bit longer than I would have expected here to number 8, but for the Saints, you got to pounce on this talent. I know that there were some rumors about the degenerative knees or whatever the medical diagnosis was. However, all I know is that he's an absolute ball hawk, and he's a Swiss Army knife that you could use anywhere on the football field. I think this is great value, especially for a team like New Orleans, who's really trying to contend in this division right away. You have teams like Tampa and Carolina, who both have major holes. So with a young quarterback in Tyler Shuck, you have the window in order to make the playoffs and make some damage happen. And I think Caleb Downs is one of those prospects that could actually take you over the edge and really promote your team into that elite category. No doubt about it, they could use another wide receiver with Chris Olave or maybe some more depth at the tight end position. But I think Caleb Downs is a great pick for them. You're trying to revamp this defense and make it a whole lot younger to match with Tyler Shuck's time frame. But I think Caleb Downs is going to be an absolute star, and this is a great pick by the Saints. So then we move on to number 9, where the Chiefs actually opt for the offensive line position. Now, I know there's a lot of rumors swirling, and there's a lot of Chiefs fans that don't really know what they want. Some people want an edge rusher, corner, or even offensive lineman. I know it's not the most flashy pick at number 9, and you probably wouldn't love to see your team select an offensive lineman in the top 10. However, for the longevity of Mahomes' career, you're going to want some protection up front. That's what made these old Chiefs teams so dominant, is just the interior presence. They let Joe Thuney go a few years ago, and you just haven't seen that same dominance on the O-line. So I think they do attack the edge rusher position later in the first round and even into the later rounds of the NFL draft. But for right now, you get a stalwart up front, and Fano is one of the most flexible and versatile offensive linemen in this draft. So you can move him around wherever you seek fit, and I think this is a home run pick for Kansas City. Number 10, we go to the Bengals, who certainly have a need on the defensive side of the ball, and they do go with the edge rusher. They get David Bailey, another guy with high potential. There is a low floor. I think a lot of his draft capital is based on his upside. He was on the number 1 defense in the country and was getting all those beneficial matchups. However, I do think the ceiling is very high. He's very quick and twitchy to the quarterback. I think with right development, he could turn into a star, and that's exactly what you're looking for if you're the Bengals. Realistically, you don't have too much time left on this Joe Burrow window as far as him committing to your team for the rest of his career. If things start to spiral downward like they have been the past few years, you might just have him requesting a trade. So this time you shoot for the moon here with David Bailey, and hopefully he can make an impact from day one to really transform this team back into a playoff roster, because once you get Burrow in the playoffs, anything can really happen. So I love this move for Cincinnati. And then we move to the fire sale Dolphins here at number 11. They've let a lot of players go this offseason, and one of the most major moves was moving on from Jalen Waddle. So this time they go with Makai Lemon, the wide receiver from USC, and yes, they select him over Jordan Tyson. Seeing Tyson's medicals really slip down the board for me. His hamstring injury still lingering is definitely a concern. So Lemon profiles as one of the more pro-ready wide receivers. He can hit the ground running and is a slot wide receiver. So the NFL is shifting to more of that slot role, the guys that can play anywhere, and you can get him the ball immediately, which is a quarterback's best friend. And you bring in Malik Willis, first year in this system, you're going to want him to have that safety blanket, and I think Makai Lemon is that and even more. So he is very explosive as a prospect. So I think he can actually really help this offense and make them dynamic with him and Achane. However, there is still a ton of holes still left on this roster, so it's unclear whether they're in the rebuild or just try and contend right away phase. But I think if they're trying to contend or rebuild, Makai Lemon is a home run pick here for Miami. And then we go to number 12, where the Dallas Cowboys are certainly in win now mode. And this time they go with Jermod McCoy. The cornerback from Tennessee missed all of 2025 with a torn ACL. However, for the Cowboys, you're just going to take the shot on the upside of this prospect. If you asked before last season, he would have been mocked as a top 5 pick. One of the premier corners in the NFL, and I think they get their hands on him. You traded for Quinnen Williams at the deadline, and that really shored up your run defense. However, it was open funnels as far as the corners going against opposing teams' wide receivers. So they try and make some more changes here, bringing in some young bodies. They've already made some free agent signings as well. And hopefully if you just transform this team into a top half defense with the offense you currently have in Pickens and Lamb and Dak, Javonte, all of the bodies that were humming last season, if they're able to withstand that production with a competent defense, this team could actually make some noise in the division. So stay tuned for the Cowboys, but at number 12, they go with Jermod McCoy. And then we move past the top 12 and we go to the Rams at number 13. They got this pick from the Falcons last season, who traded to get James Pierce. However, now the Rams own this 13 pick and they go with Vega Ioane, the interior offensive lineman from Penn State, a very versatile and physical offensive lineman. He's predominantly going to play the guard position, and for the Rams, you're just looking for more holes in your roster that could really kind of throw a wrench in this Super Bowl push. And I think the one kind of red flag could be offensive line depth. So if you see a few injuries go down during the season, that could derail the season. So being proactive, I think the Rams opt for Vega Ioane. I also wouldn't be shocked if they trade this pick for an actual offensive lineman as well. So no matter what they do, they're certainly going to get a stud. They've been dominating the past few draft classes. So I think Vega Ioane, one of my top offensive linemen off the board here for the Rams. And then we go to number 14, which probably should have been the Raiders pick. However, it's now back to the Ravens due to that Max Crosby trade falling through. And they follow suit. They go offensive lineman with Monroe Freeling from Georgia. And I think this team really wants to reestablish that identity with the read option of Lamar, plus Derrick Henry, that made them so formidable in the past few seasons. And they need a beast offensive lineman, and I think Freeling can be just that. Standing at 6'7", he's an absolute monster, and I think a team that just lost out on Tyler Linderbaum is going to want to fill that hole directly in the NFL draft. And I think Monroe Freeling can definitely hit the ground running for this team that's trying to win the division. I think it's very wide open with coaching changes surrounding the entire division except for Cincinnati. I think first-year head coach Jesse Minter is going to have these guys playing right, and I know he's going to add some more defensive bodies in the later rounds as well. But at number 14, with this luxury pick after that phantom trade with Max Crosby, they go with Monroe Freeling. 15, we go to Tampa Bay, who has lost a lot of bodies on the defensive side of the ball, and they do make a fix here with Akeem Mesidor, the edge rusher from Miami, a very physical and tone-setting edge rusher. He's quick to get to the outside and is a run stuffer nonetheless. So I think Tampa could really use a guy like this. You just lost Levante David to retirement, and this overall defensive scheme is getting a lot older. You're going to want some more younger bodies to play within this system and some more electricity as far as kind of guys that are fast and quick to the ball, and I think Mesidor is one of those premier prospects at doing that. I think this solves an immediate hole in their roster, and I think this team could be back to contending. I know you lost out on Mike Evans in free agency, but being able to get this defense back to where it was when they were winning a Super Bowl should be the main concern, and I think they address this need at 15. And then we go to number 16, a guy that slid down the board a whole lot. It is going to be Mansour Delane, the lengthy cornerback from LSU. I do think that he could get drafted earlier. I think some landing spots would be the Saints as well as the Cowboys. But if the Saints end up with Caleb Downs, this could be a spin as far as falling down the board. So Mansour finds his way to New York, who just parted ways with Sauce Gardner last season. They want to beef up this defense right away, and this time they get Ruben Bain and Delane. I think this is a great combination and certainly a recipe for success for whatever quarterback they bring in the next few seasons. He's going to have a roster around them, and it starts with the defense, so I love this selection from New York. Then we go to number 17, another team trying to rebound in 2026. It is the Lions, and they go with Caden Proctor, the offensive lineman from Alabama. So, like always in the NFL draft, offensive linemen just get pushed up the board. However, I think Caden Proctor is much deserving so. He is definitely the most athletic offensive lineman in this draft class. They were using him everywhere on the field at Alabama. Even some wide receiver screens, yes, as an offensive lineman. So I think this is Dan Campbell's dream, is to be able to pair him with Penei Sewell. That's what made this offense so dynamic with Jahmyr Gibbs and Monty. But if you're shifting to more of Jahmyr Gibbs' type of workflow, you're going to be running to the outside, getting his speed, and I think you're going to need some athletic bodies. So a guy that might go later on other teams, I think, is a premier prospect for Detroit here. And then we go to a trade at number 18. It is going to be the Vikings trading down with the Buffalo Bills, who go up to get the third wide receiver. It's going to be Jordan Tyson from Arizona State. I mentioned that injury concern. However, if you're the Bills, you got time to wait. Their season isn't going to be starting until the back half. You have a roster that's ready to win now, so you can really allow him to get fully healthy. And you take a shot on a guy that might have the highest upside of any wide receiver in this draft, and a guy that is a premier prospect similar to CeeDee Lamb, who can do it on every aspect of the football field, a 3-level route runner, and when healthy, he is absolutely dominant. And if you're Buffalo, you're just trying to chase greatness here. You have guys like DJ Moore and Khalil Shakir that can get it done. And no doubt about it, Josh Allen can take any team far in the playoffs, but if you hit on Jordan Tyson, this team could immediately turn into a dynasty as far as this offensive production. If you have him, Cook, Allen, I think this team could be a wrecking ball, especially in a division that now has some added competition with Miami and New England pushing forward. So I think they make this home run play and afford to trade some added draft capital in order to make this shot on Jordan Tyson. At 19, we've got the Carolina Panthers, and they also follow suit in the skill position. It's going to be the tight end Kenyon Sadiq. He is kind of mocked in this area, but I think Carolina pounces on him. You definitely need some more weapons outside of just Jalen Coker and Tetero McMillan. You haven't paid Bryce Young yet, so you want to figure out if he's truly your guy, and I think Canales is going to want to see that, especially with a new weapon here in Kenyon Sadiq. He makes their offense a lot more dynamic, especially in the red zone. Sadiq is an athletic freak. He was also a guy that was breaking all the combine records, so I think you could use him on all these different quick screens. He could be kind of that Swiss Army knife on the offensive side of the ball, and I think Sadiq is a great fit here in Carolina. And then we move on to the number 20 pick, where the Dallas Cowboys are selecting again, one of the numerous teams who have 2 first-rounders here. However, this time they stay in the same spot, and they actually go with Keldrick Falk, the edge rusher from Auburn, who has a boatload of potential, and that's exactly exactly what you're looking for. I know that his metrics as far as his pass rush win rate are significantly lower than others, but as far as the upside and character of this guy, I think you're going to want to take the shot on him if you're the Cowboys. This defense struggled to get to the passer, and if you're trying to develop a guy that could actually turn into a multi-year Pro Bowler, I think Falk is exactly what you're looking for. Pairing him with Quinnen Williams up front, as well as the new signings you made, I think this team could get back to rolling. And pairing him with Jermon McCoy, your other draft pick, this defense should be rehauled. And I think they're going to be a force if they make these selections, especially once these guys get their feet wet. So in the back half of the season, watch out for this young Dallas core, especially on the defensive side of the ball. At 21, we've got the Steelers, and this time they go back to the offensive line position. You made numerous signings as far as Michael Pittman and Rico Dowdle to make this offense a little bit more explosive, but now you get some protection up front. So you get Caleb Lomu, an offensive lineman, also from Utah, very versatile. He can play almost anywhere on the offensive line. I think that's what you're looking for because the main red flag would be the offensive line of this roster. You have a defense that's aging but should still be in that contending window, and you made the necessary signings to make this offense just more explosive, like I said. So being able to pair that with an offensive line that is above the top half of the NFL could make them the leaders in this division as far as contention for the playoffs. So I love this move for Lomu and the Steelers at 21. And then following suit at 22, it's Chase Basantis, the interior offensive lineman from Texas A&M. And yes, the Chargers need offensive linemen. I know that you're getting Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater back from injury, but this is the position that has plagued them the past few seasons, and I think added depth is exactly what they need. I know they've made numerous signings as well in free agency to attack this, getting a new center as well, but for the interior, I think you're always going to want more bodies, and I think this offense and defense is very well polished as far as the weapons on both sides, so I wouldn't see a need to really take a skill position guy here. So I think the big man up front is exactly what Jim Harbaugh, as well as new offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel, who loves to run the football, is looking for. So I think this is a great pick for Los Angeles. And then we go to 23, where Howie Roseman does it again. He gets Dylan Thieneman, the safety from Oregon, who has been flying up the boards recently. He set the combine on fire, a 4.3 40-yard dash. This guy is an absolute burner. You might remember him from sealing the game against Penn State in overtime, that game-winning interception. And after watching the tape, this guy is so explosive. He is quick to the ball, and overall one of the smartest prospects, especially in the back end in recent seasons. I don't like saying that it's Caleb Downs at the safety position and then a huge gap to the next guy. I think it's him and Thieneman at the top tier, but no doubt about it, I think Howie did it again, getting some more security on the back end after letting Reed Blankenship go to Houston. I think this is an immediate need that Philly solves. I know that you can make the argument for O-line, but I do think in rounds 2 and 3 they will attack that position, but right now Howie gets the value at 23. Then we go to 24, where Cleveland goes with Emmanuel Pregnon, another offensive lineman off the board from Oregon, and this Cleveland Browns team that came off of the offseason with all 5 of their starting offensive linemen hitting the open market in free agency. You're going to build some continuity here, and it starts in the draft. Getting a first rounder to pair with Carnell Tate, your other first rounder, I think this offense is exactly what they need to approach in the NFL draft. This defense is top 3, no doubt about it. Whether they have Jim Schwartz or not, I think that defense has enough talent to make it go. So I think they definitely need to approach on the offensive side of the ball, and Pregnon is one of those guys that can step in and deliver right away. You want to establish Quinjon Judkins and really not put too much stress on Shedeur Sanders' shoulders. So being able to run or play off of the run game as well as this defense, I think that is the recipe for success in order to win some football games next season. So I love this move for Cleveland. Moving right along, we've got 25, where it is a trade. So we got the Bears trading back after giving up capital for DJ Moore. They opt for added security as far as future prospects go. And the Cardinals trade back into the first round here at pick number 25 to get Ty Simpson. Yes, this team is desperately needing of a quarterback of the future. Letting Kyler Murray go and Jacoby Brissett, yes, he put up a lot of numbers. They were mostly empty, which is the reason why they ended up with a top 3 pick. And I think this team opts for some more firepower at the quarterback position. Ty Simpson, yes, is a raw prospect, has struggled at times in his limited starting notice at Alabama. However, going into next season, you could actually afford to play him behind Brissett for the first half of the season. Really let him ease in slowly. I think that makes the most sense for this roster. You have all of the playmakers with Wilson and Harrison Jr. with McBride at the tight end position. I think this is a recipe for success going into a division where you're going to need to put up points. Maybe you just weather the storm of this year with Matthew Stafford probably retiring after next season, and then you make your move and your push in order to make a real contention in this NFC West division, and I think Ty Simpson is a guy that can do so. So I do think he has extreme upside, just needs some more coaching and kind of development as a prospect, but I love this move at 25. And then we've got the return at 26 of that trade with Buffalo, so now this pick goes to Minnesota after they got Jordan Tyson earlier in the first round, but now Minnesota's on the clock and they opt for Brandon Cisse, the cornerback from South Carolina. I think this is just an added auxiliary as far as Brian Flores' defense. You lost a lot of pieces in free agency, and I think the back end is always the most important part as far as Flores' defensive scheme. If you're able to cover well and get pressure with 4 or 5, his defense is absolutely incredible. And now that you've kind of been cycling in and out bodies on the back end, I think you draft a premier first-round corner in order to fill that hole, and I think it's a perfect fit for Minnesota here at 26. And then we move on to 27, where it is the San Francisco 49ers, and they opt for another guy up front. So now with the Trent Williams trade and cut rumors here, I think you opt for Blake Miller from Clemson, a big offensive lineman that really debuted as a freshman, setting the world on fire, but now he is in the late first round, and I think you capitalize on this value, taking the upside pick at offensive line in order to really keep this team on Brock Purdy's time frame. I know everyone's getting a little bit older on the offensive side of the football. You got Mike Evans, George Kittle, and CMC, probably all 1 to 2 years into their career, kind of derailing or kind of slowly easing off. So if you want to stay on Purdy's timeline, I think you need to build up this O-line and then go with the playmakers. So I think this is a good pick for San Francisco. Now it's time for the last trade of the mock draft. At 28 is the Texans moving back, and the Raiders jumping up a few slots to get back into the back half of the first round. And they get his teammate, yes, they get Fernando Mendoza's former wide receiver at Indiana University. So now you get Omar Cooper to pair with his quarterback in college. I know this team is lacking wide receiver talent. You have Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty, but why not get that chemistry from college and translate it into the NFL? Omar Cooper is a guy that's risen up the board like crazy. He's a slot wide receiver, but also plays a lot bigger and physical with that yards after the catch, similar to Deebo Samuel. And I think this is the missing piece for this offense to really put it all together. And I think for the Raiders, who are picking first in the second round, this is really no worry for them. You trade up a few slots in order to guarantee yourself you get your wide receiver that you want ahead of some teams that could desperately need wide receiver. So I think this is a great move for Indiana Hoosiers, getting their 2 guys on the same team. And for the Raiders, this is absolutely a successful pick. Next at 29 is going to be Kansas City back up again. And like I mentioned it before, those 3 needs. You need edge rusher, back end, cornerback / safety, as well as the offensive line. Well, you already took Spencer Fano. You checked that off. However, now they capitalize on the talent after edge rushers have been going like crazy. You get Colton Hood, the cornerback from Tennessee, who really stepped up this past season and has been playing very well and good football as of late. I think he has extreme upside, and for the Chiefs, you're desperately needing this. You recently traded away Trent McDuffie. You let Jalen Watson go as well. This back end can't really survive just springing in third stringers. If you want Spags to dial up those crazy blitz packages, you're going to need some bodies out there that can actually cover. So I think Hood is a good pick at 29. And then we go to another team with 2 first rounders. It is the Dolphins, who once again go with the edge rusher position. It is going to be TJ Parker. So now this pairs him with their wide receiver, Mekhi Lemon, 2 in the first round. I think these are both great picks. TJ Parker, a very good downhill pass rusher, is also very athletic in the run game as well. I really like this pick because if you're the Miami Dolphins, you let Bradley Chubb walk as well. This defense needs some firepower as far as getting pressure on the quarterback. You're in a division with a potential kind of Josh Allen, Drake May next 10 years, so you're going to want to actually get some premier edge rushers. So you bolster up that defense while you try and contend on offense here with TJ Parker. And then we go and stay in the division at number 31. It is going to be the New England Patriots, who go with Eli Stowers, the tight end from Vanderbilt. Yes, I'm a little bit higher on him than others. I think he sneaks into the first round here. Hunter Henry is aging, and I still think he is a great complement to Stowers as far as their games. Very different tight ends. Stowers is much more explosive and kind of that athletic wide receiver tight end hybrid. Think of guys like David Njoku or Kyle Pitts, guys that can play with any offense and any system, really. So I know that you got Romeo Doubs, but this team still needs some more playmakers. I don't think Doubs, Hunter Henry, and Kayshon Boutte are enough for Drake May in order to take that massive next step. So for the Patriots trying to climb back into the playoffs and really rewrite everything back as true, you're going to want Eli Stowers here at 31. And then we move on to 32, where it's going to be Seattle, yes, the defending Super Bowl champs, and this time they go with Avion Terrell, a guy that has been slipping down the board. However, as far as future upside, he has a ton of it, and for a team that just lost Riq Woolen, I think this is a great hole fill for Seattle, trying to contend in this division. You got to cover guys like Mike Evans, Puka, as well as Devontae Adams. Oh, and yes, the Cardinals actually do have some playmakers with Michael Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr., so you really can't afford to kind of have liabilities back there, and I think Seattle knows this. Mike McDonald's scheme is reliant on it, and they go for the guy that has NFL pedigree. His brother AJ Terrell on the Atlanta Falcons has been balling out his entire career, and I think they stay in the family here, getting the other brother at Clemson. No doubt about it, he has a high floor, but also extreme upside. So that is going to do it for the entire first round mock draft of the 2026 NFL Draft. So let me know in the comments below if I got your team right, and I would love it if you guys hit that subscribe button. That is going to do it, but stay tuned for a whole lot of new videos coming up these next few months, and that is going to do it. Peace.